Hello everyone. Today we are going to talk about an adventure fantasy film called The Extraordinary Adventures of Adele Blanc-Sec from 2010. Enjoy your viewing. Ferdinand is walking through Paris at night and stops at a copper statue of a horseman to relieve himself. At this time, bright reflections appear near the monument, similar to the Northern Lights, but in fact they are light glare from the window of Professor Esperandieu, who is conducting another experiment. Meanwhile, in the city's greenhouse, the result of this experiment is born. A real pterodactyl hatches from an egg that is tens of thousands of years old. In hot Africa, the caravan finally reaches the pharaoh's tomb. The young traveler Adele and her assistants go downstairs, following the instructions she has been studying for a long time. She is not interested in gold or fame. All she needs is to get the mummy from this particular tomb, because all sources indicate that it is the mummy of the great physician of Pharaoh. Despite the machinations of her enemies and the appearance of the local police, Adele manages to escape, taking the heavy sarcophagus with her. A car accident involving a pterodactyl occurs in Paris. The accident becomes famous not only because it was caused by a bird that became extinct thousands of years ago, but also because a famous politician and his girlfriend were in the car. The president instructs his aides to look into the situation, not really believing in the story of the flying monster. However, during a telephone conversation, he sees the dinosaur himself through the window. The president's orders quickly spread through the city, and it comes down to Inspector Capone, who is given only a day to investigate. The first thing the policeman does is go to the museum, but the employees hide the fact that they found an empty eggshell and a broken window. After sending the detective to a graduate student who specializes in ancient creatures, Esperandieu is feeding his pet fresh steaks. When the police come to his house, he hides the bird on the balcony, closing the curtains tightly. However, the detective decides not to waste time and have lunch right during the conversation, taking a dish of boiled eggs from the basket. The smell of the eggs makes the pterodactyl come out to the guests, frightening them. The shocked inspector orders the arrest of the mad professor. A happy Adele arrives at the Paris train station with a huge wooden box. When she gets to her apartment, the housekeeper greets her with talk about how her eternal souvenirs from different countries are already too many in the room. But Adele isn't going to listen to her complaints, because she can't wait to unpack her find. Quickly paying for the services, she escorts the housekeeper out. After drinking a glass of wine, Adele goes into the next room, where her sister Agate lies on the bed with a vacant look and a pin in her forehead. It was for her healing that Adele embarked on this journey. After talking to her sister, she returns to finally open the wooden chest. On the way out of the apartment, Adele meets her friend André, who brings another note. The young museum worker writes to her every day, but Adele is so busy with her adventures that she has no time to reply. Nevertheless, she takes the note, promising to read it during her evening bath. Meanwhile, Adele goes to the prison to visit her old friend Esperandieu and develop a plan to escape, as he is the one who is supposed to revive the doctor's mummy. Pretending to be a lawyer, Adele gets to meet her friend, but the deception is quickly revealed and she is thrown out of the gate. Attempts to sneak in under the guise of a nurse, a cook, and a nun also fail. A famous hunter, Saint-Hubert, arrives in the city and promises to find and deal with the pterodactyl quickly. The man goes to the Eiffel Tower, and while he spies the monster from the observation deck, the detective decides to have a juicy steak. Naturally, his lunch is again interrupted by a hungry bird. It seems that Esperandieu's execution is unstoppable. Then Adele decides to use her last chance. She puts on her most beautiful dress and uses all her feminine charms to get to a meeting with the president and ask him to pardon her friend. It's not hard to guess how this story ends. The circumstances were different. When Adele noticed an approaching pterodactyl, she covered the president with herself, knocking him to the ground. The guards took this as an attack on the head of state and sent the girl to the police station. The president himself did not even realize what had happened, and was more upset that his little dog had disappeared. The only thing left of the pet was a ball that fell from the sky. Saint-Hubert and the police organized an ambush in the park, wearing sheepskins. They estimated that the giant bird's nest was somewhere nearby. Tired Adele put the mummy in a glass case. Looking at the shriveled brown skeleton, she took off her dress and corset, lit a cigarette, and immersed herself in dreams of how this ancient body would save her sister. Adele decides to take a bath and finally opens her fans' letters. After reading the first one she got her hands on, she jumped up and ran outside. When she met André, Adele went with him to see the pterodactyl, next to which sat a happy Nelson. The brave girl decided to ride the monster, and she succeeded. She came up with a plan to free Esperandieu. After circling the city, she flew to the square where the execution was to take place, and a few seconds before the signal, she lifted the professor into the sky. The museum staff welcomed Esper, who had always been their friend. The bird's joyful voices and sounds became too loud and reached Saint-Hubert. Aiming the gun, the hunter pulled the trigger and hit the target. When the pterodactyl screamed in pain, the professor, who had a mysterious connection with the bird, felt the same. Esperandieu felt sick, and Adele hurried to take him home so that he could revive the mummy before he left this world. Esperandieu gave the girl a command to place ancient objects around him and began a ritual, but his strength suddenly ran out, and he fainted. At that time, an exhausted pterodactyl sat down on the ground in the park. Realizing that this was her only chance to save her sister, Adele was desperate. But suddenly the mummy sneezed and came to life. A brown, shriveled man came out of the glass case and greeted the girl, saying that he had heard and seen all the good she had done for him. Adele was a little embarrassed, realizing that her discarded corset had not gone unnoticed either. The mummy leaned over, looking closely at the girl's face, and noticed her resemblance to her sister. However, the ancient man explained that he had nothing to do with medicine. In his lifetime, he was an engineer and nuclear physicist. While the guest was drinking tea, Adele sadly told him about what had happened to her sister. 5 years ago, during a game of tennis, her shot was so strong that it knocked Agata down. She fell on a hairpin that had fallen out of her hair and has remained immobile ever since. Adele blamed herself for the incident and was always looking for a way to save her sister. The mummy apologized for being unable to help, but inadvertently mentioned that the ritual that had awakened him had also awakened all similar exhibits within a 2-kilometer radius. Adele grabbed the latest issue of the newspaper, which announced the exhibition of artifacts from Ramses' time. The unusual company set off through the night city. Adele was carrying a cart with a frozen Agata, and the mummy, dressed in a classic suit, walked around as if he had lived in Paris all his life. At this time, Ferdinand came out to the night promenade, looking with fear at the monument that had scared him so much last time. When a shriveled mummy appears in front of him, the man faints. The mummy opens the locked gate by just touching the lock, and easily puts the guards who came running at the noise to sleep. After that, the company easily manages to enter the hall with the sarcophagi, opening them one by one. The mummy lines up the pharaoh's subjects near the main tomb, and only then opens the tomb of Ramses. The disgruntled ruler looks around, not understanding why strange people interrupted his sleep. However, Adele cannot hold back any longer, and wiping her tears, she tells Ramses about her grief. After listening to the girl, Pharaoh orders his doctor to examine Agata and help her if possible. Magic begins in the room. The doctor uses vessels with Ramses' organs, takes out a stuck pin, and conjures over the body for a long time. Then he wraps Agata's head with a bandage and leaves her to rest. The doctor himself, along with his awakened friends, goes for a walk in the nighttime of Paris. When Agata regains consciousness, she remembers only being hit by a ball, and doesn't realize that 5 years have passed since she last played tennis. Ferdinand also regains consciousness, and looking around, wonders if he has imagined a mummy in a suit. But at that moment, several city guests who have just left the museum approach him, causing him to faint again. Ramses is delighted with the beauty of Paris, but in his opinion, the city lacks a pyramid, exactly where the glass pyramid of the Louvre will appear many years later. Excited, Enrej goes up to Adele's with a gorgeous bouquet of roses, but learns from Agata that the girl has gone on a trip again. Fortunately, her sister turns out to be no less charming, but much more friendly and hospitable. Accepting the bouquet of roses, Agate gladly invites the boy to tea. Adele, meanwhile, boards a huge liner that will take her to new adventures. The girl is a little worried, because everything goes wrong from the very beginning, but her thirst for wanderlust takes over. Unfortunately, Adele does not yet know about the fate of the Titanic, on which she plans to cross the Atlantic Ocean. And on this strange note, the movie ends. If you have watched the video so far, you should know that I am happy to have viewers like you. Thank you for watching to the end. Subscribe to the channel and follow the news. Blanc-Sec Recapped was with you. See you soon.